Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Alan Wooten, East Coast Managing Editor for the Center Square. Today, a look at tax base and rural land. Joining me for this discussion is Anthony Henning, our reporter in Pennsylvania. Anthony, we talked pre-production about a little bit of what's going on here. Can you explain to the audience what the rub is for the local communities, for the taxpayer, and the services they get?
Yeah, so this centers around payments in lieu of taxes, which is basically, we'll see this in some states and on the federal level, where if a state agency or a nonprofit like a university or a hospital, most commonly, instead of paying property taxes because they're exempt, they'll pay what's called a payment in lieu of taxes, which is generally a much smaller payment to local governments to fund basic services, schools, et cetera, et cetera. This is a big deal in rural Pennsylvania because the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, the Pennsylvania Game Commission, the Fish and Boat Commission own a lot of land, and that means that it cannot be developed in rural areas, and these local governments, which rely heavily on property taxes, cannot always fund, road construction, basic service maintenance, school funding especially is a big deal here. So in the recent state budget that just passed a couple weeks ago, those payments have increased. And now these state agencies are paying $9 per acre, split evenly among municipal governments, county governments, and school districts. And so this is basically trying to work out some deal, trying to make rural legislators a bit happier. And as one Representative Martin Causer phrased it, this is about tax fairness and making sure that local communities can still provide for some very rural, very large land masses.
Is there are there strings attached to the money? In other words, are there any restrictions, or does it kind of go into a general fund for the local community or the school district?
There's not really any strings attached here. This just basically goes into the general fund for county or municipal governments or into the school district to use as they see fit of where the high priority is. Some of this money is also, it's not just from the state agency general funds, it's coming from slot machine revenues. This is kind of a political compromise where obviously these state agencies don't want to lose more money from their budget. So to sweeten the deal or to make the impact a little less harsh, the state is kicking in some of the money they get from gambling funds, which of course the gambling entities don't exactly like either. But, I guess it's a sense here of splitting the pain to make everyone a little unhappy rather than make one person very unhappy.
And you mentioned also about the amount of land and where there are opportunities and all. Tell me a little bit more about that. I mean, yeah, the land's there, and once it changes hands, not a lot of chance it's going to change back, I guess.
Yeah, I think any county, even Philadelphia, suburban counties like Chester County, you can see these problems flare up because once the state agencies own this land, that's basically it. You can't use it for future development. The state agency has control over the land rather than local or county governments getting a say in how that land is used. And these agencies have also been criticized for just how aggressive they are about acquiring more land. Senator Chris Dush out of Brookville, up in kind of the northern tier of Pennsylvania, he doesn't call them payments in lieu of taxes. He calls them a pittance in lieu of taxes. And so, he's pointed out that, the Pennsylvania Game Commission alone controls more land than the entire state of Delaware. And some of these rural counties, Cameron County alone, 60% of the land is owned by the state. Potter County, it's over 50%. So there's a number of rural counties across Pennsylvania where close to a majority, if not more, of this land is controlled by state agencies, which makes it very difficult, to either develop right against a small town or something we see flaring up in places like McKean and Out County. You have state or federal control of land right up against a town or right up against state other land. So you're getting fights over, whether ATVs can access this land or e-bikes, things like that. This can be a fight over, how we want outdoor recreation to go, or whether you want to allow natural resource exploitation, either timber rights, natural gas and oil. This touches a lot of different ways. And I think, the outlet here is fights over pilots, wanting more of a say over how much land is acquired by these state agencies.
Anthony, thank you so much for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at the Center Square.